Tudor was one of the most unpopular queens of England. She led a sad and tragic life, being the first queen regnant of England, yet reigning a short period of only 5 years. Although brief, Mary was able to become extremely unpopular due to the execution of hundreds of Protestants in the name of her religion, leaving her country in terror and resulting in her nickname, Bloody Mary. Mary Tudor was born in 1516 to Henry VIII and his first wife, Catherine of Aragon.
Catherine of Aragon bore Henry 6 children, including 3 sons. However, all of them died except for one, their daughter Mary. She was the only child to survive to adulthood.
Henry VIII desperately needed a male heir to take the throne after him, but he knew Catherine could never provide him of that.
Henry secured an annulment with Catherine and instead married Anne Boleyn, his second wife. This declared Mary as illegitimate, so her title basically went from princess to bastard, which enraged her and of course caused strain in her relationship between her and her father.
However, Anne Boleyn bore yet another daughter, Elizabeth. Henry's goal was still not achieved, so he married his third wife, Jane Seymour.
Finally, Henry had a male heir, Edward, with Jane Seymour. Jane also requested that Henry reconcile with Mary, and so Mary was then named the godmother of Edward. So the succession of the throne would then follow as Edward, then Mary, and then Elizabeth.
Henry VIII died in 1547, and Edward became king at the age of 9. However, Edward was strongly Protestant, whereas Mary was Catholic, resulting in quarrelling and Mary's disobedience towards King Edward. So when Edward fell ill, the royal succession was thrown into chaos.
Edward knew that by Mary becoming his successor, all his Protestant work would be undone and she would try and return Catholicism to England.
Edward's advisors came up with a solution. They proposed Mary's Protestant cousin, Lady Jane Grey, as heir to the throne. However, Mary had more support over Jane because of blood, as she was directly related to Henry VIII and Jane was not. Jane only reigned for 9 days before Mary gathered an army and eventually beheaded Jane.
Mary was able to quickly win support over Jane due to her direct relationship with Henry VIII. Also, she specifically and cleverly didn't mention her religion, so she had both the support from the Catholics and the Protestants.
In July 1553, Mary Tudor, aged 37, was crowned Queen of England at Westminster Abbey and became the first true queen regnant. The first act Queen Mary achieved was to declare her parents' marriage valid. Next, she was determined to restore the Catholic allegiance. She also needed to have children to continue the Catholic England she envisioned, to avoid passing the throne down to her Protestant stepsister, Elizabeth. Mary established a marriage with Catholic Philip, King of Spain.
Mary's motivation to marry Philip was due to the idea of remaining childless and passing the throne down to her Protestant half-sister, Elizabeth, who would definitely reverse her Catholic reforms. Mary's cousin, Charles V, insisted that she marry his only son, Prince Philip of Spain. You see, Philip had a son from a previous marriage who was heir apparent to vast territories of continental Europe and the New World, so Mary had obviously hoped for as successful male heir as Philip's son, and therefore married him.
Philip spent most of his time elsewhere in Europe, while Mary remained in England, which left her feeling quite depressed in his absence. Their marriage was also widely unpopular with the Protestants and led to a rebellion. However, Mary quickly crushed it and hanged all the leaders, proving her power to the public and aiming to discourage any future rebellions.
Mary was determined to restore Catholicism in her country by all means necessary. She believed that this required burning people at the stake for heresy.
Mary reinstated the heresy law, stating that Protestants committed religious and civil offence amounting to treason. She would have defined heresy as not only being wrong, but persisting in being wrong, and if they continued to defy her religion, she would burn them.
Mary's plan to cleanse England of the Protestant curse turned into a frenzy of murder. She burnt around 300 Protestant heretics at the stake, ultimately making her even more unpopular. As a result, Mary earned the name Bloody Mary.
Those who are heretics were killed without mercy. There is even speculation that she burnt a pregnant woman on the stake.
Burning someone at the stake is a very nasty process, and it takes a long time for them to die.
Not only was she very unpopular, but her marriage was also not working out. Mary was 11 years older than Philip and unable to bear a child.
Many people believed that Mary was pregnant in 1554. However, that turned out to be false. This happened again in 1557, yet the causes are unknown. Many suspect it was due to her overwhelming desire to fall pregnant.
Now, around this time, her health was failing, and it became clear that she was dying. Mary was now determined to enact merciless revenge on those who had wronged her in the past. After further burning, Mary had grown to become a hated monarch.
Mary wasn't popular because of her marriage, her failure to have a child, and her religious persecutions.
However, Mary was influenced by Philip to support Spain in a renewed war against France in 1557. It was a very unpopular decision, as it would jeopardize the French trade.
The results of the war were damaging for England. Furthermore, the Pope supported France, so it strained the relationship between England and the papacy. It also saw the loss of England's last possession in France, Calais, further damaging Mary's reputation.
Mary died in 1558. After ruling for 5 years, Mary made little achievement but to return Roman Catholicism to England and impose her beliefs. Failing to produce a male heir, Mary had to name Elizabeth as her successor, who would restore Protestantism to England. Mary died alongside her hopes for a Catholic England.